In April and May 2026, we travelled through southern Peru, from Lima to the highlands and then to the jungle. It was a fascinating kaleidoscope of history, nature and local traditions. We are Jim and Dawn. And here's the itinerary of our Explore group. Our first day was spent in Lima. On day 2, we flew to Arequipa and spent day 3 in that city. On day 4, we drove up to the high plateau and spent the night near Yanquay. Early on day 5, we visited Colca Canyon and then drove on to Puno and Lake Titicaca. On day 6, we took a boat trip on the lake and stayed the night on Taquile Island. On day 7, we walked on the island before returning to Puno. On day 8, we headed for Ollantaytambo, stopping at the Raqchi Inca site. Day 9 was spent exploring Ollantaytambo, the Maras salt pans, the Moray Inca terraces and visiting the Misminay community. On day 10 we took the train to Aguas Callientes and then the bus to Machu Picchu. On day 11 we explored Aguas Callientes before taking the train and bus to Cusco. Days 12 and 13 were spent in Cusco. On day 14, we flew to Puerto Maldonado and took a boat up Rio Madre de Dios to the Eco-Amazonia Lodge in the jungle. Days 15 and 16 were spent in the jungle. On day 17, we began the long journey home. On day 1, we arrived in Lima at about 7 in the morning and travelled to the hotel. Check-in was not available until the afternoon, so we dropped our bags and went to explore. We walked down to the coast and headed south towards the Barranco district and back. It only took a few minutes to reach the cliff top above the coast, and this gave us good views in both directions. The route along the Malecon passed several flower-filled gardens. We continued south through Miraflores to Barranco. On our return north, we stopped for lunch before walking on to the Love Gardens. Here, there are many padlocks declaring undying love and the famous Kiss statue. After checking in at the hotel, we went for another walk down to the beach. Our route passed over the main coastal road, which appeared to be a permanent traffic jam. The first beach was filled with bathers, the next had surf schools, and beyond the jetty was a serious surface. In the evening, we met our group leader, Joe.
So at 6:15 we depart with everything, okay? What's our plan tomorrow? We're going to take a flight to Arequipa.
We also met our fellow travellers. Here we all are. From left to right, Kevin, Emma, Chris, Tony, Maria, Denise, Yvonne, Dawn, Jim, Rachel, Ritu, Sheila, Hilary, Kate, Steve, Kevin and group leader Joe. On day 2, we travelled to Arequipa, the White City, famed for its Spanish colonial architecture using the volcanic rock sillar. Everyone was on the bus by 6:15 a.m.
Here we are on our way to the airport.
We arrived at Lima Airport in good time for the flight to Arequipa. The rugged landscape slipped below us, and soon we were in Arequipa. The bus took us to our hotel, and after checking in, we all headed for the centre of the old town. Here's our route. We headed east over Rio Chile, and then south towards the cathedral and Plaza de Armas. From there, we walked through the cloisters to our lunch stop, and after lunch, we wandered independently before returning to the hotel. As we cross Rio Chile, we see El Misti to our left. After a couple of blocks, we go south towards the cathedral. Intricate carving of the white volcanic rock sillar. More white volcanic rock of the cathedral and arcades around the Plaza de Armas. Joe introduces us to the local speciality, queso helado.
Another single.
Iglesia de la Compañía de Jesus is a fine example of the Andean Baroque carving of the volcanic rock. The beautiful stonework is continued in the adjoining cloisters that we passed through on our way to lunch. At lunch, we sampled some traditional Peruvian dishes. The food was lovely, but the helpings were huge. Maria was a bit surprised to be served the head with her guinea pig. After lunch, we passed St. Augustine's Church, another example of Baroque carving of the volcanic stone that's given Arequipa its White City name. We spent some time in Plaza de Armas before returning to our hotel. And later, we walked to the Yanahuara lookout to the north of our hotel. Behind us, the sun was setting. Through the arches, we see the El Misti volcano to the left and the city spread out below us. Beside us is another richly decorated church, and we visit it before returning to our hotel. Day 3 was also spent in Arequipa. In the morning, the whole group visited the Santa Catalina Convent, and then went on to the San Camilo market. And after these, we separately took lunch, and then went for a tour of the cathedral. We again got good views of the volcanoes on the way to the convent. Here's the outer wall and the entrance. Here's a map of the UNESCO World Heritage Convent. This walled city within a city was established in 1597 and occupies over 20,000 square metres. It once housed 450 nuns, but now less than 20. Dwellings on its 6 streets are painted a bright terracotta colour. Here's our guide, who led us through the streets, cloisters and buildings. We passed through the Court of Silence to the Novices' Court, with its educational murals, the Novices' Chapel, and a Novices' Room. The area for consecrated nuns is painted blue. Here's their cloister of the orange trees. De Profundis, an area of mourning for the dead. Note the deceased are painted with their eyes closed. Here's the hospital, now used as a display area. Not all nuns were equal. In this street was 50 houses. Daughters of wealthy patrons had larger quarters, such as this. Some even had maids and manservants. An historic kitchen. And the laundry area. Nearby are tranquil gardens. The bakery, with its soot-covered walls, the fountain, the great cloister. It leads to the art gallery. The walls are covered with religious paintings. For me, the most impressive item is this 17th century gold and silver monstrous. To the north of the site is the church. The area currently occupied by nuns. After leaving the convent, we walk through the square and on to the San Camilo market. There, we sample a range of local fruits before heading for lunch. After lunch, we take the cathedral tour. We begin in the central nave. Then, climb above the organ, giving a bird's eye view along the central nave and to the back of the organ. Next, we visited a display of vestments, black for funerals, purple for Advent and Lent, and so forth. Finally, we climb onto the roof. To the north are the volcanoes, to the south the bell towers, and magnificent views over Plaza de Armas. Later, the group meets for a sunset drink overlooking the plaza. We all don the bar's ponchos and sip our drinks as the sun slowly sinks below the horizon. On day 4, we leave the Spanish colonial architecture of Arequipa for the desolate beauty of the Andean high plateau. Here's our route. The road climbs north around the Chicani volcano, up to the Pass Mirador de los Andes, and then down to Yanque in the Colca Valley. We start at 8 a.m. and soon leave Arequipa behind. The Chicani volcano. It's a steady climb. After about an hour and a half, we see agriculture in the valley to our left and the north side of the Chicani volcano to our right. This recently crashed lorry and the numerous roadside shrines suggest this is a dangerous road. Camelids wander these high plains, a wild guacano. We were lucky to see one flock of vicuna close to the road, but they take flight when we stop to view them. We pull off opposite this strange rock formation for a refreshing coca tea. We continue to climb. The shepherd on the hillside with his alpaca. Shortly afterwards, we stop at a roadside herd of domesticated llamas and alpacas, and they were wearing ear tags to identify their owner. We continue along the salt flats, and after another 45 minutes, reach Mirada de los Andes Pass, the highest point on the road, 4,910 metres. Different Andean peaks are signposted. These ones hold the source of the Amazon. The rest of the journey was downhill and on to our hotel in Yanquay. After checking in, we travelled down to the Colca River and spent the rest of the afternoon relaxing in the thermal pools. On day 5, we visit Colca Canyon to see the Condors, then travel on to Puno. Here's our route. We travelled up the Colca Valley to the Cruz de Condor lookout at the head of Colca Canyon, and on returning we stopped at Maca, then retraced the last half of yesterday's journey from Arequipa before heading east on the long journey to Puno on Lake Titicaca. The Sabancaya volcano was quiescent as we loaded the bus. Just after we boarded, a plume rose from it, and this drew our attention as we left Yanquay. The Colca Valley has long been cultivated. Lining the slopes of the valley are terraces dating from pre-Inca times. The area is seismically active. This church in Maca has earthquake damage. As we continue down the valley, the river cuts deeper and the valley becomes a canyon. The Cruz de Condor viewpoint is a little way along this canyon. As the name suggests, this area is home to Andean condors. And we spend the next hour absorbed in watching these magnificent birds. Some just sit on rocks. But many are in the air. After a while, we decide to go to the lower area. On the way, we see this finch trying vainly to divert the crowd's attention from the condors. Another condor, viewed from the lower platform. Time's running out, so we go back to the upper area. The resting condor stretches. The gorge below is empty, and other condors are high in the sky. We join our fellow travellers, board the bus, and head up the valley. We reach the Mirador de Huedrapunca after about half an hour and get these lovely views of the Colca Valley. Next stop is Maca. We walk around the plaza, on the corners of which are these lifelike statues of people in traditional Andean dress. We also sampled sancayo, an acidic cactus fruit. After leaving Maca, we settle into the 300-kilometre journey east. The sun sets as we reach Lake Lagunillas, and we reach our hotel in Puno after dark. On day 6, we took a boat trip on Lake Titicaca. First, we visited the floating reed islands of the Uros people, then travelled on to our guest house on the Taquile island. Later, we took a walk on that island. Our hotel beside Lake Titicaca is on the edge of Puno and has its own jetty. We walk down to the jetty, board the boat and meet our guide for the trip. The boat navigates through channels in the reeds to the area of the lake occupied by the Uros people. On the way, we pass some of their livestock, the lagoon area occupied by the Reed Islands. We head across to one of the floating islands and are greeted by a welcoming party in traditional dress. We take our seats and an Uros lady explains the construction of the Reed Island and our guide translates. The base comprises large pallets of totora roots pegged and tied together with rope. Alternating direction of reeds are laid on top, and houses are built on its top. Extra layers of reeds are added as the lower levels rot. Cooking fires are on stone slabs, and reed boats are used for transport and fishing. The white base of the totora reeds is used for food and for cooling browse. Next, we were shown some of their handicraft and had opportunities to buy some of their products. Kate tried on this outfit, but decided against it. Denise liked this little boat. The shower block, some reed buildings, solar panels. This island's a mixture of traditional and modern. Final purchases made, we board the reed boat for a trip to the main island. Our hosts give us a leaving serenade and a surprise farewell. The reed boat, with us all on board, was powered by just 2 oarsmen. Other reed boats plied the lake, some with a helping push. We disembarked onto the main island and our boat comes to pick us up. Soon we leave the Uros settlement behind and head east through this channel. Boats carrying freshly harvested reeds for the islands. We reach the edge of the reed beds and head out over the open lake, past the headland, towards Taquile Island. We go around the south of the island and up to the jetty below our guest house. And here's our guest house. In the evening, we go for a walk. As we go, our guide explains the Taquilinos' way of life. The islanders have their own language, their own dress, and have a collective society. Quinoa. The path leads up to the church. Taquilinos' marriages mix Inca traditions with their Christianity. A boundary marker delineating the end of the region. There are 6 regions, and over there is the next boundary marker. We climb up to this viewpoint on the west side of the island, and from here we can see Bolivia across the lake. Going south along the west side of the island, we come to this flock of sheep and linger to view sunset. A little further on is this restaurant and gardens, from which we see the clouds turn gold as the sun finally sinks below the horizon. We walk back to our guest house, and after supper we treated to a music performance. And dancing with the locals. Day 7 began with a display of the textile art of the Taquile people. All men learn to knit from childhood. Here are some cellos or knitted hats. The right, single-coloured one is part of a married man's outfit, and the left is for an unmarried man. A test for boys reaching manhood is that they can knit a cello fast and tight enough to hold water. If a single man wears his cello folded to the rear, it indicates he's engaged.
Behind of the head. Weddings, very easy to identify them because you can see the different positions of the hands.
Clothing worn by all islanders preserve Inca traditions. On marriage, waistbands instead of rings are exchanged, and copies of these waistbands become part of a person's uniform. Women weave on Inca ground looms, whilst men knit.
Every pattern has a meaning.
Pre-Hispanic patterns are preserved in the waistbands. This one is a traditional calendar belt.
Both sides you can find 2 different colors, here and here.
Tassels on women's cloaks indicate their age. The bright coloured ones are for young women. And as they get older, less layers are used.
30, 40 years old, 50 years old.
After the textile exhibition, we made our farewells before setting off for the main village. Here's our route. We walk north to the main village plaza, then down to the jetty, take our boat to Puno, and spend some time in the city before returning to the hotel. It was a pleasant walk north along the island. We occasionally met Taquilenos. Over the lake we could see Bolivia. More locals. Our boat carrying our cases. The entrance to the main settlement. Performers in the plaza. A woman spinning. And men knitting. The path to the jetty. And there's our boat. We leave Taquile behind. Sail past the headland. And on to Puno. After disembarking, we travel to the town centre and find lunch before returning to our lakeside hotel. On day 8, we travelled from Puno to Ollantaytambo. It was a 450-kilometre journey. Our first stop was the museum at Picara. Next stop was for lunch, followed by a visit to the Raqchi Inca site. We then drove on to Ollantaytambo. We leave our hotel early to catch the bus to Cusco, and we're soon leaving Puno behind. An hour later, we pass through Juliaca, continue north, and after about 2 hours, we arrive at the museum in Picara. Here, we're given a guided tour of the pre-Inca, the Inca, and the Spanish-era exhibits. We leave the museum and climb up to the La Rea Pass at 4,335 metres. Our lunch stop. The path to the Raqchi Inca site. Ahead are remains of the temple of Viracocha. What we see are remains of the central and outer walls and feet of columns that supported the gable roof. Prior to its destruction by the Spaniards, this was the largest gable roof in the Inca Empire. The base of the walls are classic Inca stonework, topped by an adobe wall. To the north of the temple are living quarters, and to the east are circular grain stores. We head to the west of the site to get a panoramic view before returning to the coach. Uros. Our last stop is Andahuaylas, where we leave the Cusco coach and visit the 16th century Church of St. Peter. Outside, the locals are partying, and Dawn joined them for a dance. Unfortunately, photography is banned in the church, and these glimpses were obtained from outside. We complete our journey to Ollantaytambo in our minibus. Day 9 was spent in the Sacred Valley. In the morning, we had a walking tour of Ollantaytambo town and the archaeological site to its west. In the mid-15th century, Inca Emperor Pachacuti conquered and rebuilt Ollantaytambo. The layout and terracing largely dates from his time. In the afternoon, we visited the Maras salt pans, the Moray Inca terraces, and spent the evening with the Misminay community. We gather at the hotel reception, head east over Rio Patacacha, and then north into the old town. Inca water gullies, the archaeological site to the west, a double jammed door. Inca stonework with Spanish stonework above it. The main street leads to this Inca period building. comprising rooms around a courtyard. This one has Inca merchandise.
The position will determine if it's units, tens, hundreds,
Quipus for
thousands.
counting.
This is called chacana. It's a representation of the three worlds.
An Inca whistle jar. And other assorted bric-a-brac.
It is magic. Oh yes, yes.
There are even guinea pigs. Retail therapy done, we head for the main square, and Joe tells the story of the General and Princess Kusi Koiler.
That is part of the story of this sound. Ollantay is the name of the general, and Tambo or Tambo is the resting place. The resting place of Ollantay, Ollantaytambo.
Next, we head west to the archaeological site. The fortress to the left is pre-Inca, but the temple complex and the terraces of Pumatales were built under Emperor Pachacuti in the mid-15th century.
City that today is known as Cusco. In Inca's time was known as
After a briefing by
Cusco.
Joe, we climb up the terraces to the temple. Temple masonry is of highest quality, tightly interlocking stones on walls sloped backwards to resist earthquake damage. Kevin and Emma. The hill to the east, with its grain store, temple, and lookout. To the north is the funerary area. Unfinished masonry shows the interlocking methods used. The rock was brought from the hills on the opposite side of the valley, the military section. We descend to the bottom of the terraces. More stones prepared for interlocking. The ceremonial fountain. Beyond are further rooms and a field with alpaca. We decide to return to the hotel. In the afternoon, our bus takes us up the valley to Urubamba, then uphill to the Maras salt pans. These salt pans date back over 2 millennia and are now owned by hundreds of local families. There are now over 4,500 pans along the mountain slopes. An amazing pre-Inca relic. Flow from the saline stream is diverted to the pans, and salt accumulates as the water evaporates. Periodically, the salt residue is broken up and removed. Our next stop is the Moray Inca ruins, believed to be a crop research centre. The bowl causes temperature inversion, where the bottom is much cooler than the top, simulating different altitudes. Different soils have been brought in to the terraces, so the difference in crop yield with altitude and soil type can then be assessed at a single site. Our final stop of the day was the Misminay community. This rural community preserves their ancestral traditions and supplement their agricultural income by hosting tourists and by acting as porters on the Inca Trail. We were welcomed with a communal dance. Before our hosts introduced themselves,
We are very happy to see you here. Oh, she's the leader of the rural tourism.
and gave us friendship bracelets. We joined them to stargaze after our Andean
If
meal
there's
with
full
them.
moon, they should do planting the whole land because
To share stories and to listen to their music. It was a lovely end to a busy day. On day 10, we take the train to Aguas Callientes and then visit Machu Picchu. We walk to the station in Ollantaytambo and take the early morning train along the side of the Urubamba River to Aguas Callientes. Later, we take the bus up to the historical Machu Picchu site. The Machu Picchu citadel lies between the Machu Picchu mountain to the south and Mount Huchuy Picchu and the Huayna Picchu mountain to the north. It's surrounded on three sides by the Urubamba River. It's a 20-minute walk from our hotel to Ollantaytambo station. We board and are soon travelling up the Sacred Valley on the 2-hour journey to Aguas Callientes. Here's the start of the 4-day Inca Trail, going over that bridge. Inca terracing. Here's our station. We grab a snack before heading to our hotel. An hour later, we're on the bus to Machu Picchu. The entry queue. We're on Circuit 1, the panoramic route. Most of our group are on Circuit 2 with Joe. Here's our guide.
And my name is Lisette.
Orchids and bromeliads. East of Machu Picchu and the Huayna Picchu mountain behind it. As we climb, we see more of the citadel. To the southeast is the Sun Gate, the Inca checkpoint for Machu Picchu. It's where walkers on the Inca Trail get their first sight of the citadel. Access to the east is denied by the vertiginous slopes, and to the west by the Machu Picchu mountain. We continue up to the high terrace. Machu Picchu mountain is in one direction, Huayna Picchu is in the other. A little further along, and the citadel comes into view. To the west is a steep drop to Rio Urubamba. Agricultural terraces, mainly to the south and east, surround the urban sector. And the urban sector is in two parts: temples and royal buildings to the south of the main square, and craftspeople and servants' quarters to the east. There are even terraces and a house at the top of Huayna Picchu, and a compass on top of Machu Picchu. Those on Circuit 2 had a close view of the buildings in the citadel. Machu Picchu, like Ollantaytambo, was part of Emperor Pachacuti's royal estate. Its population was about 500, nobles, priests and their support staff. It was occupied for about 80 years. It's special because of its stunning location and in that it is unspoilt by Spanish redevelopment. Kevin Wade, on his second visit, had these views from Huayna Picchu. We complete our circuit.
My friends Dom and Jean. Bye-bye.
And take the bus back to Aguas Callientes. On day 11, we independently spent the morning in Aguas Callientes, and in the afternoon, the group travelled on to Cusco. Here's Jim and Dawn's route. We first walked to the thermal baths and on to the waterfall. We explored the town. Finally, we visited the butterfly farm, before returning to our hotel, packing and walking to the station. The group took the train back to Ollantaytambo and then our minibus to Cusco. The queue for the Machu Picchu day tickets filled the street outside our hotel. We headed to the river, then followed the path towards the thermal baths. Bas reliefs on the rocks line our way. We decide against bathing and continue up to the waterfall. We head back down to the town and cross this bridge with its mass of love tokens. As we wander, we encounter Maria keeping Paddington Bear company. Next, we follow the river south out of town until we reach the butterfly farm. We took a tour of this conservation project to see how they bred and released local butterfly species. In caterpillars, they're placed in containers where they pupate. We spent some time in the butterfly house before returning to our hotel to pack and go to the station. We reversed the train journey of yesterday back to Ollantaytambo before taking our minibus on to Cusco. On day 12, we visited the Sacsayhuaman Inca site before taking a walking tour of Cusco. We began our day with a visit to a clothes shop and then drove on to the Sacsayhuaman Inca site. From there, we drove to the San Blas district, where Joe gave us a guided tour through the old town to the main plaza, before we returned to our hotel. It's about half an hour to the shop. On arrival, we're faced with pens of camelids, llamas, alpaca, vicuna, samples of their wool, demonstrations of spinning, weaving,
and get all of these different colors, they have to use many different plants.
and
There's
dyeing
dark
methods.
red. It's more like a pinky color.
It's an upmarket shop. Maria fancies this wrap. Is it you?
It's me.
The price is too high for Yvonne. Yours for $4,800. Yvonne?
Yeah, only.
What are you going to go for then, Tony? Tony looks at smaller items. Shopping done, we head for Sacsayhuaman. And here we are. Sacsayhuaman. This Temple of the Sun and Fortress is the head of the Puma layout of the Inca city of Emperor Pachacuti and his successors. Most of the buildings on this site were destroyed by the Spanish to use as building material for their redevelopment of Cusco. What remains is impressive. We enter from the northeast alongside Sucuna Hill. To the south is the zigzag north face of Sacsayhuaman. Viewed from Sucuna Hill, we see the 3 levels of the zigzag wall and the hilltop where forts used to stand. Cusco is to the right. Close up, we see the amazing dry stone building technique of the Inca. It's amazing how humans alone could quarry, transport, shape and build such huge blocks into these walls. Joe told us some myths.
Aliens came and helped them all to build things. But well, that's what people believe. We respect it.
And some facts. Archaeologists have identified the source quarry.
The quarry is located 8 kilometers on that direction. And they found rocks that are the same kind of composition with the size that is big enough to produce these massive rocks.
And the method of quarrying, using hematite drilling and wood expansion to crack blocks off. The huge tribute labour force from the expanding Inca Empire hauled the rocks and built the structures. We climb up to the intermediate level and to the top. Sucuna Hill is to the north, Cusco to the east, and footprints of buildings to the west. We return to the esplanade to take our bus into town. The bus drops us off by the San Blas market, a place where locals shop. From there we head along Tandapata, past St Blas Church and Square. If we continued, we'd reach the Sapantiana Aqueduct. But we backtrack to Cuesto de San Blas, home to arts and craft outlets. This street led to Hatanrumiok Street. Fine Inca palace wall is now the base of the Archbishop's Palace. This particular 12-sided stone is, for some obscure reason, a tourist attraction. Towards the main plaza, the cathedral, the Church of the Society of Jesus. Our tour ends with a game trying to spot 10 churches from the plaza, after which we go our separate ways. Day 13 was a free day in Cusco. Most of us explored the city, but 3 people hiked up to Rainbow Mountain. Our day ended with a farewell to Joe, our guide. Here's Dawn and Jim's route. We first visited the Cusco Regional Museum, then walked to the Machu Picchu Museum, which was closed, took coffee in the plaza, visited the Inca Museum and the convent before returning to our hotel. The Cusco Regional Museum. It also acts as a function space. Inside are pottery and metallic objects from before 1000 BC up to the Spanish colonial era. We return to the plaza. These balloon-festooned cars turn up, and as we take coffee, this parade appears. It was entertaining, but I don't know what it was for. After discovering the Machu Picchu Museum was closed, we headed for the Inca Museum. This too had artifacts spanning several millennia. And the now familiar mummified corpses. We head down Avenida El Sol, up Titicaca to the Convent of Santo Domingo. This fine Spanish colonial convent and church was built using stone from Coricancha, the most important temple of the Inca Empire. Conquistadors called it fabulous beyond belief and stripped it of its gold wall coverings and gold statues. The foundations of the convent are remains of Coricancha, precision Inca stonework. Looking over Jardin Sagrado, we could imagine Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, towering over the Inca capital Cusco. Kevin and Emma Evans and Kevin Wade took the 3.5-hour drive and 500-metre climb up to over 5,000 metres altitude to see Winnicunca, the Rainbow Mountain. This beautiful mountain is breathtaking in more ways than one. Up to 2013, it was snow-covered. This is our last dinner together and the end of our explore trip. Joe gives his farewell speech.
For coming here. So thank you so much, not only for picking Explore as a company, but for picking my country, Peru.
And Peru replies on our behalf.
From all the hosts, from Cycling here to make photos and, lunch party.
We've got to do the holiday.
Tomorrow, some go home and the rest of us go on to the jungle.
Thank you guys, thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
On day 14, we fly from Cusco to Puerto Maldonado for a 3-day stay in the Amazon. After landing at Puerto Maldonado, we transfer by bus to the jetty on Rio Madre de Dios and sailed for about an hour downstream to the Eco Amazon Lodge. After checking in, we had our first walk to Cocha Cayman. On our second day, we visited Apu Victor Lake in the morning and went to Monkey Island in the afternoon. On the third day, we took a boat downstream, walked to the wetlands, and then explored by canoe. It was hot and dry as we headed out from the lodge. Our guide pointed out different plants as we went. A monkey ladder liana. Cocha Cayman, and as its name suggests, it's home to cayman. And also to Hoatzin birds. The next morning was cold and wet, but it didn't stop us exploring more of the jungle habitat. Our guide was leading us to Apu Victor Lake and pointing out flora and fauna as we went. A tarantula's nest and its occupant. A shiwako or ironwood tree. Another fallen shiwako. Our guide demonstrates how hard its timber is. A termite's nest running up this tree. Termites. A tree hollowed out by termites. Another nest. Strangler vines. A walking palm. And a younger one whose roots step it along the forest. Fungi. Ants. The bridge to the lake. We climb the viewing platform to view the lake and see more hoatzins perched in the trees. Next, we go boating. Another cayman. It's a tranquil and enjoyable journey. More birds. And bats hidden on a tree trunk. After the boat trip, we return to the lodge, where a macaw is posing for the tourists and a agouti roam the grounds. After lunch, we travel to Monkey Island, which is in the centre of the river. The monkeys here are tame and less elusive. They perform for tourists in exchange for food. When we reach the feeding station, the capuchin monkeys begin assembling, then rush down for food. They're also happy to take it from our hands. Next, the spider monkeys approach. They seem a little more wary, but eventually step over us to get to the food. After feeding's finished, we head back to our rooms at the Eco Lodge. Our third day began early. Our boat dropped us off at the trail and we followed it north. A mature strangler vine with the original tree gone. A shiobako tree. An ant's nest. After about half an hour we reach the canoes. They need bailing out before we can set off through the swamplands. Another caiman. A kiskadoo, swampland vegetation. The trees are mainly palms. A grackle, macaws, vultures, a hummingbird's nest, a heron, a pheasant cuckoo. We stopped by the viewing tower. This one's much taller than the one at Apu Lake. We climb it. It takes us up to the canopy level. This side is deciduous forest, and the swamp side contains palms. Spider monkeys are in the foliage. We paddle back to our start point, walk down to the river, and return by boat to the Eco Lodge. We leave on the fourth day. After breakfast, we collect our luggage and board our boat. 2 hours later, we reach Puerto Maldonado and start our long journey home.